Welcome to the next McKee Learn Lunch. You may notice in your materials that it's the 17th or the 18th. We haven't figured out yet. The problem that we ran into was that there's one, we're trying to prepare a website. And so we've all gone all the way back to the beginning with the first one, which was several years ago. And we can't find the fourth. It's lost somewhere. So we're considering the option of just dropping the fourth since it's not there, which would make this the 17th. If we include the fourth and just say we lost it, then this is the 18th. Now, you may have suggestions that you would like to offer. I'm joking. I'd like to thank these two fine ladies over here.
This one.
And that one too.
She's the finest.
Starting from the beginning, Brooke, you've all heard from her in one way or another. Brooke Bates, my graduate assistant who does the work. And next is my wife, Zilla, who behind the scene does the work. And then there's Angie, who does the cooking. And we enjoy her benefits. And we will a little while
Angie's
later.
opening a new restaurant on Thursday. She's moving from the Southern Traditions on Dayton Boulevard to the Red Bank Family Diner. Is that right? Just down the road.
Okay.
Where there was a Thai restaurant there, if any of you know Dayton Boulevard, that closed down. So grand opening is Thursday with newspaper reporters and all kinds of things. So, any prizes? Did you get any prizes?
No, well, the grand opening will be next Friday.
Oh, excuse me.
Really cutting, and, ooh, it's gonna be so fun, I'm so excited.
Well, she has been a part of our learning lunches now for a long time and has never failed to entertain our taste buds. So thank you all for your assistance. Now, today's topic, according to reports I've heard here today, is we're not the only group talking about this week. Apparently there are other groups that are discussing the same topic. It's a hot topic. We have to prepare for the future. It's been a challenge ever since I've been here for almost 20 years. And we finally decided it was a challenge sufficient for our type of discussion. So we've brought this incredibly distinguished group of people together, which you will meet at your table and in the panel and so forth. So, what are we looking at? What does the future need in terms of talent? This is a school, therefore you should have expected to have seat assignments, and you should have expected to have written assignments, and you actually have 3. And the first one involves the 3x5 card that should be beside your material. And we need for you right now to write down on that card a question that you have regarding Chattanooga's need for talent in the future. Any question that comes to your mind. You're not going to be graded on this, just need a question and leave it on the table. Looks like everybody's just about done. Thank you. Now, we are very fortunate to have with us in Chattanooga, in general, as well as here today, Molly Blankenship, who will be our speaker. She's Vice President of Talent Initiatives, couldn't have a better speaker than that, at the Chattanooga Chamber of Commerce. But let me give you a little background. Prior to joining the Chattanooga Chamber, Ms. Blankenship served as the Advancement Manager for the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives in Washington, D.C. In that position, she managed a portfolio of programs related to education attainment, talent development and diversity, equity, and inclusion. She provided consultation to chambers of commerce on education and talent development and worked to stimulate the cross-sector collaboration necessary for true community progress. Ms. Blankenship also managed the Fellowship for Education and Talent Development, a 9-month professional development program that helps chambers improve education and talent development outcomes in their communities. The fellowship has supported more than 80 Chamber of Commerce professionals from across the country. As a result of their participation, those chambers launched collective impact initiatives to address cradle to career education outcomes, work-based learning collaborations, college completion strategies, and more. In addition, Ms. Blankenship provided strategic direction and program management for the Education Attainment Division, a national network of more than 700 chamber champions working to advance education and talent development priorities. Before joining that organization, Ms. Blankenship was an associate on United Way Worldwide's network engagement and performance team. Ms. Blankenship is, now this is the best part, last sentence, a Tennessee native. Studied public policy and advocacy at Middle Tennessee State University. So we have a homegrown expert with international expertise, whom you will hear from now. Follow.
Thank you. I don't know where he got that bio, but that was something else. Thank you, Dr. Tucker. I appreciate it. So yeah, I'm Molly Blankenship, Vice President of Talent Initiatives at the Chattanooga Chamber. Started there in August, so I still feel new, and I will claim new as long as I can. But I do sort of feel like I'm among friends in this room, which I didn't know whether how many of you I would know, so I'm excited to be with you and engage in this conversation. I see it as sort of one of many conversations that we'll continue to have around this topic, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and how we see that playing out. As Dr. Tucker and I talked about the possibility of me kicking off this conversation, I really struggled to figure out where I would bring value, because these learning lunches that Dr. Tucker is an expert in facilitating are really about you all and community learning and conversation and collaboration, not about someone like me pontificating about what I think the solutions are, which I do really well. But so I sort of landed on 3 things that I thought I might be able to share that might be valuable as a kickoff, right? Just sort of a first step before you all really get to engage in the work. And the first is, I hope that I can help us establish a shared definition around what talent development is, what we're even talking about, what is a talent pipeline. There's a lot of words that get thrown around in our community and across the country about what that even means. So I thought maybe as a first step, let's just figure that out. The second is I'll share some data. I'll just sort of throw some data at you that will help you have an informed discussion about what the state is currently of Chattanooga and Hamilton County's talent pipeline, so you can use that in your discussions. The Chamber is currently engaged in a 5-year strategic planning process around economic and talent development. You see it branded there, Chattanooga Climb. So I've got some preliminaries for raw data that I can share with you there that I hope will help. And then the third is I'll just touch briefly on why now is a moment to be talking about these issues. I think we've been talking about them for a long time in this community before I arrived, but now I think we're at an important moment to come back, to realign, to make data-informed decisions and partner in new ways. So that's where we're going. We'll start with that first I mentioned, which is what is talent development? There's a lot of words that fly around whenever we're talking about people, education, you heard some of them in my bio, education attainment, workforce development. All of them are sort of singular in their nature. All of them have connotations that I think spring up in people's minds whenever you say them. Like if I say workforce development, I'd say probably some people see old notions of like an unemployment office, right? It doesn't really have a broad definition for them. Education feels sort of singular. It shouldn't be, but a lot of times education doesn't have a strong connection to industry or workforce. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So the Chamber's really dug into this terminology around talent development. I'm not in HR. I don't do learning and development. Talent development is about making sure that we have a qualified pool of skilled people in our community in Chattanooga and Hamilton County who are ready to fill the jobs that we have and to be professionally and personally productive and successful and fulfilled, really, okay? So this image here is sort of what my brain looks like, honestly. Like if you wanted to wake up in the middle of the night with me and know what's happening, it's something like this. It's like just turning and keeping me awake all night. So talent is at the center. Talent development, again, an all-inclusive, holistic term that I use, talent development. And I know this is hard to see, so I'll sort of tell you what it says up here. There are 4 main areas that we can focus on, populations or people that we can touch in order to make sure that we have that pool of qualified and ready people. Pre-K and K-12 education. Early, that's talent development. When you're talking about early childhood outcomes, that's still preparing people to be ready in the future. Post-secondary attainment, making sure that students are enrolling in and completing post-secondary degree programs or credentialing programs that prepare them for success. Adult degrees and credentials, maybe that more traditional idea of what workforce development is, making sure that adults are trained and retrained for the jobs that are present in their community so that they're on a pathway to success. Talent attraction and retention, also a part of this. Making sure that our community is one that is vibrant and attracts people to come and contribute and stay and give back. And then to touch on those 4 areas, there are several strategies that we can deploy. We're doing a lot of them, maybe all of them already. We can launch programs that address the issue. We can work on policy change, systems change that move systems so they operate better and prepare people better, like Chattanooga 2.0 is aiming to accomplish, right? Use messaging as a strategy so that we're engaging parents, students, employers, institutions in the right way and creating a shared message and understanding of what the challenge is and engaging people. And then on that outer ring, you see these 4 sort of key principles that without, we are just never going to get there on talent development. It's just never going to happen. Leadership, not only that people and institutions are willing to play leadership roles, but that we have the right leaders in the right place. And that means for our institutions, for our employers, for our teachers themselves, we have to have those strong leadership roles acting in this work. We have to use measurement to make data-informed decisions and have a data use culture, something that we're talking about a lot, and that we're using data for continuous improvement in this work. We're not just throwing programs out without actually seeing if they work. We're coming back, failing, and then seeing what works, right? Partnerships. We've got some really strong partnerships in the room, I'm happy to say, but that we have to partner in new and different and bolder ways in order to make this happen, to have a strong talent development system. And then finally, equity. Another term that I think can sort of conjure images in people's minds. What does that actually mean? Sometimes it can create really strong images. I thought I might stop here a little bit and kind of hone in on this term. It's really important to making sure that we have a talent development system that works in our community and that works in the long term. I think communities all over the country, especially as the nature of work is changing and changing so rapidly, we're in a state of sort of perpetual catch-up around talent. Right now, we're trying to address the mistakes we made 15 years ago. We're trying to catch up and triage, and what can we do? We've got people who are not succeeding, jobs are changing, like we're freaking out, right? And if we don't employ an equitable lens to this work, we'll just perpetually be in that state. And so that really is foundational for me. And I wanted to give you a new image of what it looks like. I'm sure many of us have seen the image of students or children peering over a fence, right? And they have different levels of support for equity. This is supposed to be a better version of that. I stole it from a conference I went to like last week. What do you guys think about it? Is it what you already knew? Yeah? I know Pete knows. Some people really don't like that guy is standing there without a box. I feel like his box was taken away.
What about the person in the wheelchair without a box?
I think that must be because they don't want them to roll off the box.
Oh, but they have a computer.
So she has she has a support, right?
Okay.
It's about making sure that all our people have the supports that they need to access the resources and the opportunities that we have. So the solution to the guy, why didn't that guy have a box? Who took his box away? He doesn't need the box, right? We don't have to harp on it if you get it, but I think it's important. We do not in this community have a shared definition around equity. And it's important. We also talk a lot about talent pipelines, right? So that little cog image of Molly's brain, spliced out. Ideally, if you have all those different pieces working together, you're focusing in those 4 focus areas, you're using the strategies that I described, and you have those 4 core principles informing your work at every stage of the game, then you should have something like this, and it's pretty simple. It's pretty basic, actually. You should have students or people in your community who have access to training programs from qualified, high-quality providers, and you see those little cogs, more cogs. Those are supports that help make sure that they're high quality. So whether it's from a foundation or a chamber, nonprofits, whatever it may be, they're helping make sure that those experiences are high quality and they're aligned and they're meaningful and they have the resources they need. Hopefully then that person goes through a work-based learning experience. It's essential, it just is. Work-based learning, learning through work and actually connecting what you learn to an on-the-job experience. It's just critical. And finally, they're connected to an employer. And employers are really, this image does not do a good job of describing this, but employers should be engaging all along that pipeline too, because they are not just, while they are at the end of this pipeline, they are also creators of talent. They supply those work-based learning experiences, right? So they have a role to play. But ideally, this is what we should look like, and the truth is, and I think we see this in the data that I'll share in a minute, we have breaks in this pipeline right now, in places where people are falling off, or where we just don't have a connection point yet. Do you guys have questions yet? Am I making sense? Serious faces. So I wanted to talk a little bit, here's that second objective. What is the state of our talent pipeline today? How are we doing? What gaps do we have to fill? So this is what our educational attainment rates look like for, I believe this is, so Chattanooga and Hamilton County. The blue dot is the county, and then the bar is the city. So I really like this one here at the top left. Share of population over 25 with some college, no degree. A really good indication that something in that pipeline is broken, right? Someone started a post-secondary program with one of those providers, and either those supports weren't working or something happened and they fell off. So in Chattanooga, Hamilton County, 21.6% of people have some college, no degree. That's huge. It's a huge opportunity. We have Tennessee Reconnect. That's crazy. A huge number of people, adult learners, right, Dr. Scherer? People over 25 with a bachelor's degree, 21.4%, only 9% with a graduate or professional degree, 8% with an associate degree. Now we talked a little bit about equity. There's some really strong data around why this is a challenge for our community, what it looks like in actuality, and where we could start to hopefully see movement. So today, in 2017, median household income by race, $56,000 for white households, $28,000 annually for black households. So double for white households, right? It's a challenge. See something similar, share of population in poverty by race. So now we're inverted. Black households, 26.3% live in poverty, 7.7% of white households. And this equity conversation starts to get really complicated because whenever you look at the education attainment rates by race, black households actually have a higher educational attainment than Hispanic households, but Hispanic households make more annually. So a lot of complicating factors that you can start to peel back and that we have to look at. And then share of residents over 25 with some college or higher. So we have a 67.2% rate among white residents and a 48.8% rate among black residents, and then 27.4%. So that's the slide I was referring to. You can see labor force participation, unemployment by race. If you look at the unemployment rate by race, 16 to 64 there on the right-hand side, we have a 3.4% rate of unemployment among white residents, 6.2% among black residents, so again, doubled. And there was a statistic that whenever we get this report finalized, I'd love to share with you. There's a statistic that says that in the most recent census, there were only 50 unemployed black men in Hamilton County. That sounds crazy, right? What it means is that black men in Hamilton County are either working or they're not participating in the labor force at all, for the most part. So unemployed means I'm unemployed, but I'm looking for work. So there's only 50 that were counted. All right, so we go back to that talent pipeline idea, right? And we can look at how we're doing on those talent pipelines in individual industry clusters, individual occupations. So what you have here is on that little left-hand circle is the employment size for the business occupation cluster in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, the annual number of openings that are projected over the next 5 years, which is 5,000-ish, and the percent of openings that require post-secondary education, 24.4%. And then that gauge at the bottom shows how well we're doing. Do we have a labor gap in those individual sectors? So right now, we are currently producing 75% of the talent needed for the business occupation cluster. Does that make sense? We have a 25% gap. And that's counting post-secondary credentials that are coming out in alignment with those occupations. Engineering and production, we're producing 39% of the talent needed. Got about a 70% gap, 60% gap. Healthcare, we're doing pretty good. We got 81%. With that number, we also see some brain drain. We see some people leaving who are in the healthcare professions. There's some work that needs to be done there. 92% of those occupations require post-secondary education. Software and IT, we're at 24% of the talent needed. I met with some high-growth CEOs, some entrepreneurial startup CEOs yesterday, and he said, so we suck in software and IT. And I was like, that's a good way to put it. But we're working on it. And finally, transportation and logistics, 33% of talent needed. It does not just include truck drivers, it also includes people in white-collar logistics jobs, freight brokerage, that sort of thing. Oh, and then also education, which I thought was interesting. 38% of the folks that we need to be working in the education space helping to inform the talent development work, right? So anyways, I told you I would throw some data at you. I just thought it was important to sort of see what our gaps actually look like, maybe where some of the breaks in that talent pipeline might be, and help us think about what some of the on-ramps might be to get back on track. And then I said I'd talk a little bit about why now, and I'll be really brief. But we talked a lot about disparities that are present in our community. You see there on the right side, just a little bit of language around that. Talked about what equity means. And the truth is that Chattanooga has come so far, right? And I think the language in the invite you received to this event talked about the need that not everyone has had equal access or participation in that movement. And as we move forward, if we want to continue to grow and advance as a community, making sure that we address those disparities is not only going to be important to making sure that we don't have two Chattanoogas and two realities here, but that we're able to reach our full potential generally, right? And then finally, we know that this, as Dr. Tucker alluded to, and that the nature of work is changing. We're going to need different things in the future, and if we don't want to be in that constant state of catch up and triage and go back around and around and keep having these conversations, we've got to be prepared for those disruptors, preparing our people, preparing our pipelines so that they are resilient and sustainable for that change. Does anyone have any questions for me before I hop off of here?
In the software IT, what type of skill sets are they looking at, degrees, experience, or what type of preparedness do they need for those jobs that we're not really doing too well on filling with?
So you see, it's hard to see, but here on the right, these are the occupations that are at the greatest risk of labor shortage. It says computer support specialists, which is associate level, web developers, software developers, computer systems and information security analysts, and then computer network administrators are sort of the key occupations or skill sets that were raised up as where we have high need around job growth, but not high output around degree production. Does that help?
How is this data collected? How did you come up with this data?
I didn't. I'm not a data nerd, but they use a combination of labor market, census data, EMSI, a whole bunch of different sources that come together. And all of this data will be put together as sort of a final report that we'll publish and share. And it has a full data appendix with sources and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Could
talk a little bit about the number, go back to the logistics? What were those kind of jobs and the number of the numbers?
See, I'm going the wrong way. So this is one of our largest sectors, which doesn't always get talked about. 27,000-ish jobs is the employment size today. We project around 3,000 jobs over the next 5 years. 42.4%, which is not that high really, require a post-secondary education. It says there that the occupations at risk are truck and tractor operators, which we do hear about all the time, and Chat State has a truck driving certificate program, right? Supply chain managers and analysts, and then airline pilots, interestingly enough. But we have some of the largest logistics and transportation and freight companies housed here, and they have a lot of white-collar ops, sales, marketing, those sort of jobs that also are included in this.
I'm surprised about education. What was that again?
The occupations.
It's a lot lower than I expected.
I know. I thought the same. I just got this in the past couple of days. Yeah, so the superintendent does a nice job of reminding me that they are one of the largest employers in Hamilton County. And when we talk about talent and talent attraction, we need to be also talking about teachers and educators. And to not do that would be a mistake. And so the employment size is just around 13,000. All of them require post-secondary education. And the occupations at risk are teachers, middle and secondary, elementary, special education. There is education administrators and college instructors. But yeah. All right, I'll turn it over there. Thank you all for letting me kick it off. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Molly's not going anywhere. She's going to participate, and if you have more questions, let them come out. It's now time for lunch and discussion. This is a discussion lunch, and all of the questions that you have and that are stirring, do we have a problem? Is there any question about that? Okay, thank you. So we will now do lunch. You have deliberated and explored the opportunities that we have as a community. Can't wait to hear what you have to say. First of all, let's go through down the list and give your name and who you represent, and we'll start at Perry at that end. Name and who you are.
Name or I can serial. Gary Story, I'm director here at the Challenger Center.
Terry Fredrickson, I'm the Director of Development for the College of Health, Education and Professional Studies here at UTC.
And Eleanor Cooper, I'm retired, but I studied under Jim Tucker, so I guess
That's a curse.
or is.
Strat Parrott, Principal and Chief Creative Strategist of Juncture.
And Valerie Rutledge, Dean of the College of Health Education and Professional Studies here.
Okay, this is an open discussion, so anyone can intervene or disrupt, however you choose to characterize your comments or questions at any time. Be as polite as we can, and we'll see how it goes. But what we'll start with is question number 1. And we'll start at this end of the table. And if you would kind of summarize your group's response to question number 1, and then we'll go to the next person on down and to finish with number 1. So in terms of talent, what do you see as the greatest needs or opportunities in Chattanooga and Hamilton County?
The greatest need, I think, is to not see this as just a K through 12 problem, but as a issue that is almost a continuum from kindergarten all the way through the end of the work cycle for someone. So we've got to make that talent development not just something that's happening at one point, but it's a talent development process that's happening all the way along the continuum. And now the opportunity is, I think in our community, what we talk about, it looks sizable, it's scalable, and we have the partnerships that I think if we attack this, we could really make a big difference with this. And when you look at the big numbers, we were talking about some of the big numbers nationally, I mean, that's overwhelming. But here, when you look at our numbers, while we have some real issues we want to attack, it is something that if we really put some strategies and the partnerships in place to do it, we could really make a difference.
Okay.
We think that there needs to be a earlier exposure to jobs and possible career pathways at a much earlier age. And then also do some assessments on what are their motivational interests, whether it's in manufacturing, if it's gonna be in education, or if it's technology, or even the arts. So,
Okay.
That's
We wanted to focus the need on children in schools where poverty is highest and really provide concrete pathways in those schools. A need that we felt was strong is drug use. Drug use will prevent employment, so educate kids on that. STEM education, and then how to inspire resilience and learnability. Yeah, we like that word.
Learnability.
We pretty much looked at and identified that, you know, a lot of what Molly had kind of shown us up here was things that have been there for over 40 years. The list has not changed much. So, you know, kind of for the greatest needs and opportunities, we really saw that it was more about planning for the future and trying to identify common objectives between partners and partnerships, rather than maybe looking at it from so many data points. There's not really a clear objective as to what it is. That's why you have to have this explanation of what workforce development is every time, or whatever, rather than focusing on particular parts to maybe be handled by your partners.
You're suggesting that the problems or opportunities might not be as complex as we make them.
Potentially.
Okay, so we were the educator table, so as you can expect, some of ours looked at that, but we took a slightly different approach. So I'll list for you the ones that we had, and we actually felt like this spilled over into the second question. So we talked about some of the greatest needs are making sure that people who are entering the workforce have skill sets. We talked a lot about just those basic things of, can I get to work on time? Can I do it without my cell phone? Can I pass a drug test? Which tends to be an obstacle for a lot of organizations and businesses that are trying to hire people into those roles. We talked about the lack of a consistent and extended transportation system in our community, because I may really want to work, but I don't have any transportation, and maybe whatever public transportation is available is not available to me, so I don't have a way to get there. So all of those obstacles that exist are outside things that I can control but affect my ability to do it. We talked about consistent and outstanding role models, that a lot of the people don't have access to those. We did talk about some of the barriers people encountered, and it spilled over into that second one. We've talked about even childcare. If I'm an adult and I have a child or children at home, regardless of whether they're my kids or grandkids or whatever, if I don't have child care, then I may not have an opportunity to leave because I don't have someone to step in there. We talked about restriction to access, either intentional or unintentional. And then we finally talked about, have we really sat back and said, can we consolidate the focus of all of our efforts in the same direction instead of sometimes operating separately?
Very good. I'm reminded of something our just previous State Commissioner of Education said early on that didn't get picked up, and I've been disappointed. She began to refer to the total of education as K to J, kindergarten to jobs, as opposed to K-12. I don't know why that didn't get picked up, because that makes a lot of sense. If you just, and it's very much like what the first report, just think of it in terms of the total lifespan rather than a series of grades. Yep.
I would add birth to jobs.
Mm-hmm. Birth to jobs is even better.
By the time kindergarten comes, if you don't have the early childhood experiences, you are so far behind the 8 ball. So I would like all of these conversations be birth to K, or birth to jobs, or birth to retraining, or birth to death, or something. Because
like that last one.
if you don't if you don't hit especially the disadvantaged population before they get to K, they really do not have a fighting chance.
Right. And that's supported by Susskind's work with 30 million words. If you haven't read that book, you should. But if the kids that haven't heard, not understood or spoken, but heard, actually 32 million words by the time they're at the end of the 3rd grade, they are almost destined to fail. And we can fix that, according to the researchers that did it. Okay, any other comments from the tables about question 1?
Well, I think another statement that was made at this table of educators was that, you know, I think every parent, every set of parents wants the absolute best for their children, no matter what economic stage they are. And so we're looking at, you know, unless you have something like drug abuse or, you know, medical issues going on, I think that's the case. So we're looking at trying to get those resources where they need to be early. And that's one of the things we talked about.
Yes.
Was it Strat? Nice to meet you. I'm Bo. I kind of like your point and what you were summarizing there, that I think sometimes we make this conversation more difficult than it really has to be. And we have work ahead. And I think the statistics are important about early childhood reading, but I don't think that in the absence of having had that we give up on the population that missed that early reading opportunity, right?
Good.
And again, statistically speaking, even if we educated everyone coming out of high school in Tennessee, the jobs that are available, and we didn't let them leave the state, it's still not enough people to fill all the open jobs that we have now. And so back to our point from our table, it's critical that we view this at a community level for everyone in all populations and races to address this talent shortage.
Thank you. Other comments? Then let's move to question number 2. What primary barriers stand in the way of meeting our community's talent development goals? And I think the focus here is on our community. We could talk a lot about the national issues, but we're talking about Chattanooga region, Hamilton County, our area. So let's go in reverse. Start at the other end of the table.
Okay. We talked a lot about, going back to this whole part of the discussion we were just having about education, quality education, all the way from the first time they set foot into some kind of organized setting, all the way through when they exit, whether it's high school or whether it's training or whether it's an associate degree or a bachelor's degree, recognizing that that'll be different for different populations and where they're focused. We also, going back to what we had said earlier, talked about lack of adequate transportation access, whatever that might need to be, appropriate and supported health care to guarantee that health-wise you've also got some support there. And we talked a little bit about political and politician perspectives that sometimes impact what we're able to do. And so a lot of the things that affect, we all know this, education are driven by decisions made by people in political settings that then impact the resources we have, the funding we have, all those various things that can be obstacles for people who don't have all these other things that they're assuming they will have.
Okay.
We also talked about isolation, not just of poor people, but of decision makers, and almost every division line we have in this city, county, people are in isolation. And it probably impacts poor people more than anybody else, but they really don't have the soft skills and other skills and access to things which most of us take for granted, and we don't understand how difficult their life script is, simply because we've never been there. But you know, when you have a child that's food insensitive or unstable, housing unstable, transportation unstable, the majority of the communications they get are negative. et cetera, et cetera. And then we expect them to step into a middle-class organization like a workforce or a school of higher education and perform well. It's really difficult. And we folks don't typically understand that. And I think it's major.
Okay.
So our group just kind of discussed that education provider programs, partnerships tend to focus more on larger institutions and specialties there that may not necessarily be directly applicable to something else. And that maybe some of the partnerships would be better to focus on the small to mid-range businesses, more so than just focusing on partnerships that maybe make the post-secondary secondary educational institutions money. The other thing was support for like visionary risk-taking leaders, also needing visionary risk-taking leaders. We used an example of the Gilbert Elementary in North Georgia for a time was, or maybe still is, like the #1 elementary school in the country, but they're just like down in North Georgia, and if you don't know about it, you don't know about it. But they even had a lot of trouble in trying to get partnerships. People were kind of giving them trouble. So being able to support, your visionary leaders and things, and trying to look at the whole situation as things kind of one at a time. The example that I used is, if you're kind of looking at something from a military or tactical perspective, you may be inundated with a whole bunch of things at once, and you may be able to address them somewhat quickly, but you really, you're looking at them one at a time. You're addressing them one at a time. If you address them that way, you can typically handle them, but if you're trying to address them all at once, you're pretty much in a loss.
Wow.
Just one footnote was Gilbert, I think, was #1 in the state.
Oh, so.
But I don't know how they rank nationally. Maybe they were #1 in the country. Who knows?
Yeah, but they're impressive.
They were impressive. Yeah, still impressive.
Okay.
Okay, well, our group, which had some heavy hitters, also emphasized the risk-taking, the need to take some risk because we don't really know what the jobs of the future are, so therefore it's hard to prepare people for that. So there has to be some leadership that's willing to take some risk here. And along with this is a lack of awareness in the broader community. Particularly, we'd like to see businesses that are willing to take the lead in removing the barriers. There needs to be lots of partners to help with vocational training. So that was kind of the different themes that we hit.
Okay.
We talked about messaging and getting the word out to people earlier in life, letting them know that there are things that they can do that maybe for the past generations of their families, they didn't even think about that, and they don't know the things that are available for them out there. And again, how to break the cycle of inaction and pursuing secondary education, increasing the diversity in education, and in various occupations. And then how do we get more community mentors, both from the urban school and rural schools, and how do you get more interest in people becoming mentors?
Okay.
We had a lot of the same areas dealing with transportation and other areas, and mentorship educationally through the pathway and in the occupation. Again, a good mentor can make a difference. A poor mentor can really make a difference too, negative difference, but having good mentorship. But one of the things that we touched on is just trying to get an understanding of what the job pathway looks like. And I think that's one of the things, and I think we struggle with it. What does that job pathway look like? And a lot of times we want to say, this is how you get a job, and I think what we really are looking at is that it is a multi-stream of pathways to different jobs. And it's also multifaceted in that we have to look at each person and think about this as an inclusionary process. Each person's skill sets, it's okay, this pathway is how we're gonna have to go with this person because we may have to rebuild some of those basic skills that are missing. This person's pathway may be here, this person's pathway may be here, and we can maybe figure that out. Right now, it's a shotgun. We're throwing everybody into the funnel, we're letting them spin through the funnel and seeing how much falls out on the bottom end. And I think, I was working in workforce development back in the mid-'80s when some of the changes happened in the North Georgia area, in this area with mills and plants and other things. We were talking about the same issues, it was just different skill sets that they were looking at for jobs that were changing. Jobs that are changing now, but we were still dealing with the same thing. People being displaced, not having the educational background, not having the support background, and how are they going to transition to this? So I think we've got experience out there, but it's almost going to have to be finding that pathway. Also, the reality of the pathway, what we talked about, do young people really have the reality of what it's going to take to work their way through that pathway? They see a lot of things around them that says what they want to have on the backside of that pathway, but I think we talked about sometimes it's better to have someone in that pathway as an employer who's already sort of figured out that it's going to take a perseverance, it's going to take time, it's going to take me some energy to get there versus saying, hey, I want these things, I want this job, and I want to make this much money, not understanding it's going to take a lot of different struggles to get there. So that's sort of where we came up with, but we had a lot of the other barriers that everyone else mentioned. One of the things I want to say is flexibility in education and training. Flexibility from the employer side, flexibility from the educational side. It's got to be quick and nimble. It's got to move fast. I made a note, this one, somebody told me, this was a business person up in Monroe County told me this back in 1985. It's come walk a day in my shoes and then you'll see what we need to have done here. He couldn't tell me what he wanted educationally. He said, come spend a day in my shoes. Business industry, they're going 100 miles an hour. They're changing, things are happening. And if we expect an employee to go in there and work all day, all week, but now have to go over here and get training, it's got to be a partnership where maybe that's occurring in the workplace at the same time because they're investing with that employee in the workplace, not relying on an employee to drive an hour and a half to a community college to get training after work. It's got to be a lot different looking. So.
Very good. I'm hearing a number of themes, as all of you are, I'm sure. And one of them that is consistent, especially in this response to question 2, is the need for collaboration. We all talk about ivory towers. We know they exist, but what are we doing to make the connections between those non-connected operations that are part of that pathway? If they're not talking, then we can't break that barrier. And one of the things that I noticed at the end there that I remember, some point in my career, I began asking the young people who were wanting to know what to do in life. I started asking a different question that made all the difference in the world. They all asked the question initially, what should I be? Well, I would always try to go through, well, what are you good at and all of that. And then suddenly it occurred to me to ask a different question, not as the expert, but as an assistant in the pathway. And so my question became, what do you like to do? We don't address that. We only address what makes the money, where the jobs are, and so forth. But we need to connect the individuals. That's what made me think of it. We have to talk to the individual. What do you enjoy doing? And then make the connection. That's just a thought to add to the conversation. Any other thoughts? Yes?
I'm going to pick up on something Perry said, and that is the numbers. One of the gifts we have in Chattanooga is the numbers are doable. This is not New York City. You know, we don't have 180,000 problems here. the numbers are doable. So if you start looking at where you hit, where you apply the resources, you quickly, in my opinion, come to early childhood, because that's where the disadvantages start. But even more than that, you look at children who do not have the benefit of quality early childhood, people that are in unlicensed child care centers and stuff like that. So when you start getting that focused, the numbers are very doable. We just got to do it. And one of the things I would suggest is that we think about a way of training operators of non-licensed child care centers to maximize the educational levels of those centers. Because a lot of the kids that come out of those centers have not had what I would call a rigorous educational experience. They've been set in front of a TV set. And those are the kinds of small scale things that this community could do very quickly and hit the hardest kids to hit. And that would change your numbers on the other end very quickly if you could do an efficient job back there.
If there are no other comments to number 2, that's the perfect transition to question number 3.
I was gonna say,
Go ahead.
on the mentorship, we talked a lot about the mentorship, and I was just telling them, I'm born and raised in East Lake Course, in the Highland Park area, and I was just thinking back, like, I didn't see, when I say positive mentor, when I walked to school to Oak Grove and East Side every day, I just was in between gangs, drugs, and what else. So in my head as a kid, I'm thinking like, this can't be, I mean, it gotta be something better than that. So what it made me do is just like start visualize, what did I see my first positive, like, what was education or whatever, it wasn't bad people, my family did what they could do, but I didn't see nothing outside of my 2-mile radius of East Lake Courts, nothing positive, probably till I really went to the Navy. I had some coaches that was like real supportive. I went to Kirkland High School in East Side. I had some great coaches, but they want self-image. But I think when I went to the Navy, that's what exposed me to different things. But other than that, my whole 12 years, I just saw, I hate to say chaos. It was just, I didn't see nothing that showed me a better way. So I came up with the cliche, a quote that is, what you don't see is what you won't be. So when I do my programs for kids, I bring in positive role models and career people that's not in sports and entertainment. So I bring in electricians, people who don't do other stuff. So now I've been doing that actually like 10 years with the help. Actually, Dr. Tucker and his wife, they have helped me start that. So, and it's taking off. So it's like what you don't see is what you won't be. Instead of what you see is what you be, because I would have been a drug dealer or a gang member, I'd be dead by now. So, but the mentorship, it goes back to that, just really being big on mentoring, man. So, but that's a big thing with the kids. We need right now, just positive, just love it.
Well, I think that's something that comes up a lot too, is just the exposure element to other things, because like now people have so much access, even in lower income communities or in different communities, to phones and things, that you're either seen with like directly what is in your community or your immediate surroundings, or the sports star, the YouTube star, somebody who's making millions playing video games, things that are like unrealistic and unattainable, or things that may not be the most positive, but that unseen kind of in between part, like you may not get exposure to. Like my nephew, I asked him if they even did what is it, like job days or whatever, where like your parents or different parents come in and share what they do, and he like didn't know what I was talking about. Apparently, I don't know.
You mentioned the apprenticeship program. I thought that was an example of how scalable it works in our community. I don't know if you want to mention that.
Was it apprenticeship?
Yeah.
Yeah, back in November, along with the Chamber and Molly, Chat State rolled out its first college-sponsored registered apprenticeship program. And what's key about that, what's unique, what's different, is that as an employer, you can sponsor one student through that program, one employee if that's all you need, where you can sponsor 20. And it's open literally to everyone within that occupational need. And there are over 1,000 occupations that are apprenticeable. So these aren't just, skilled hand jobs. These are, professional jobs. They can be in nursing, it can be in business administration, it can really be across the field. And so when you think about it even further and how that might impact a community of poverty, is that you're connecting a paying job and education simultaneously, which I think maybe another way to help get to maybe youth reading levels or pre-K reading, educational attainment, because then we start to raise the bar for the parents that are raising these kids as well. And so it's great, and my shameless, selfish plug for you all is please say apprenticeships to everyone you meet 7 times a day for the next several months until we get these off the ground.
Good.
Thank
Well, that's right into the third question as part of the actions and commitments that we need to make. So what key actions or commitments are needed from Chattanooga and Hamilton County institutions, K-12, higher ed, employers, nonprofits, government, to overcome the barriers that we have discussed? We'll start back at the other end of stuff.
I think the simplest solution is that, again, going back, is the size is not at a point, it's scalable, the partnerships are there. We just got to really put a plan of action in place and start doing it in our community.
The key word being doing.
Yeah.
Or plan.
Yeah.
Well,
Get the plan in place first. We just kind of went back to all of the barriers and that we need to, the K through 12, higher ed, all of them need to put more emphasis and commitments into, some of it is diversity in education or in the workplace, getting, committing to doing more mentoring, and getting more people involved, and getting the message out when at an earlier age that there are opportunities out there, and so they can explore what the different opportunities are.
good.
Well, we looked at what business could do, what schools could do, what higher ed could do, what the county needs to do. So I'm going to start with where we ended up, which is what the county
building as
needs
well.
to do, because all of these things, and really the county's not putting the money up that it needs to put up for a high-performing school, and that's kind of where we ended.
So are you suggesting that it's a budget issue?
No, it's a commitment issue.
Okay.
It's a commitment from the community.
Budget will take care of itself if the commitment is there.
Yeah, if the commitment is there. And, maybe that's all of us as taxpayers, not just the leaders that we elect, but the leaders we elect make a difference. So that's kind of where we ended up, but we also said that businesses needed to connect with students in a different way. We said that schools need to connect with kids in a different way. So we're really looking at some real changes in how we are addressing the future. And as far as the schools engaging kids, it's in how they educate them, how they make them curious, how they engage them in their own life learning. Higher ed should put a dramatic emphasis on and dramatically increase the completion rates of African American males. That was just a really strong statement in the group for equity and technology. And someone had said about career day or jobs day, or maybe you did, should be earlier, junior high school, to really see get people excited, get kids curious about what they could do. So those things, but basically our emphasis was on the county, I think, to fund the schools at a high performing rate.
Okay.
Most of ours was, again, just focusing on the partnerships between higher education and businesses. I mean, very much like what Eleanor's group talked about, is having each partner kind of take ownership over what it is that their objectives and goals are that fit inside the common objective, because it can't be placed all on just one institution or one organization. You have so many different either individual businesses or things that are looking for something really specific, but then they want to put it off on to an educational institution. Like, we need particular training in this one specific type of software. Well, that should really be like training from your organization.
In-house.
We can teach using computers and systems thinking and that kind of stuff, but like your specific software, even if you give us millions of dollars, should not be the one thing that we're teaching, because that doesn't really affect the whole community. So it's just having people kind of changing their direction.
Okay.
Last and least, quality pre-K for all children, publicly funded. Have minimum high school graduation requirements that must be met, but to help kids do that, you must catch deficiencies early and remediate them so that you don't end up hitting a stone wall at the end of high school. We need to address issues of isolation of the poor, as well as educate taxpayers and politicians about the realities of the children we're serving. The last thing I think I'd say is that most people do not understand that many of the families living in poverty are one flat tire away from a real crisis. And until you can build support systems to help those families overcome what would be minor inconveniences to most of us, you will not address the needs of the poor in this area.
All right. Now, I have one final question for the panel and the participants. I'm hearing mostly things that we all intuitively know, but we don't hear at the same time like this in a collaborative fashion. What happens when we walk out? Now, all of this has been recorded and it will be available online. All of it will be reported in a final report for this session. But how do we make the plan for Chattanooga and Hamilton County? How do we assist the chamber in making this happen for everybody as a community, and not just rely on one agency or the towers, the ivory towers, to accomplish it? What is your initial response to that question? How do we do that? Anybody?
Well, for beginners, and I commend you and McKee for holding this luncheon. We couldn't be in a better place to have this discussion than in the Chattanooga Center. It just shows reality that the sky is no longer the limit. We're engaged in space exploration. And a number of initiatives have been mentioned that are critical and are important. But Molly has mentioned a talent pool. A talent pool, as many economists have reported on and done research, is a magnet to business retention, new business. So the question is, all of these initiatives we're talking about could be scaled to people here holding essential credentials to do the work that exists today and do the work that exists in the future. So what is that focus? Regardless of whether it's a certificate, an apprenticeship, be a plumber or electrician, or a certificate to be an IT specialist, or an associate degree, or a bachelor's degree, or master's. assuming those are adjusted and modified through partnerships over time to meet current and future needs. So I would urge us to think, look at the big picture in terms of the talent pool and the percentage of people holding a credential to be the common focus that people can rally around.
Thank you. Yes?
I would say that we've taken some steps, and the two major ones I'm going to talk about is Chattanooga 2.0, which the Chamber is a major player in. Actually has active discussions on equity issues. Now, you need to hold their feet to the fire. You need to make sure they're actually doing what they say they're going to do. But the public discussion on these topics has already begun. And that's why there's more than one meeting this week on this topic. The other thing is, I think we need to support our Hamilton County School Superintendent who understands the equity issues that we're facing. And talk to me if you want a little diatribe on some of those inequities. But he really understands it. And he's going to probably have to take some perhaps unpopular steps, because people are going to see him taking the box away from somebody versus adding the box to somebody else. And those are very difficult public discussions. So I'm putting in a plug for supporting your local superintendent, because he gets it and he's doing it as fast as he can.
And as a member of his equity task force, I support what you're saying. He is really out there moving ahead. I'm impressed by what is being discussed, and not just what is being discussed, but what is being planned and carried out. It's impressive. Yes.
I think being pragmatic, looking at short-term, long-term situations, and we've just got to have the wherewithal to basically grunt this out for a longer period of time than we're used to. This is not something that's going to happen over 1 or 2 years. I mean, we're talking about a decade. We're talking about those kindergarten, those preschool
Yes.
kids getting into the workforce, and we never really sometimes wait that long to see how projects work out.
We're often used to 3 to 5 year funding plans.
But what we've got to really do is look at both ends and have that process started now and try to keep that education pipeline developing and growing and changing. But we've also got to come into the employer side of it, start building it back into the pipeline, because we have a lot of people that are trying to connect and get into that pipeline that we've got to figure out those inequities and put that together and get those skill sets in to basically start meeting those needs. I think if we can start building that success on this end, it yields that situation where it's an asset to the employer. They're not having to address a lot of maybe turnover or skill deficits inside their business and industry, but it's also attracting more business and industry, but it's also attracting employees to the area. They feel that they can come here and connect into the system and get the training they need or get the skill sets into those jobs. Then we'll start meeting that. So maybe what will happen is that pipeline will sort of connect together at one time. And I think we've got to have success on both ends of it, because what I'm hearing right now is we don't have that much time to wait too long on the pipeline. We've got to sort of build back into it and take care of some of these now, and then keep building that connected pipeline up from the basic education standpoint. So that's pragmatic, but that's just my
No, it's good. Well, Molly, do you have helpful information to move forward?
I think so. Yes. Yes.
That's good, because that's critical. Your organization represents at least a central planning agency that can help bring these kinds of things together. And I think you've heard a lot of support for assisting in that effort. So I know you passed one of those around. You have one final assignment just as you walk out the door. But any final comments from anybody that you can't bear not to share? Okay, there's two questions on here that is your ticket out of the room. First question, what's the most important thing I learned today, and you can put anything you want to on that. And the second one is more important. What unanswered question do I leave with today? And we will use that as a kind of impetus to further planning what kinds of conversations need to go forward. I want to thank you all very much. Some people had to leave, and I appreciate that. I will email them the same questions that I'm giving you right now. But thank you. Let's give yourselves a hand. And good luck with meeting all of these needs.